Number 3, stand out with substance, not just style. Full disclosure, I got this example from the same book that I quoted earlier. It's actually a pretty clever idea that Nina had. In 2015, she wanted to get a job on Airbnb. She tried to contact Airbnb many times to discuss working for the company, but no luck. She wanted them, but they didn't want her. So she set out to create a resume that the company couldn't ignore. Now, I have added a couple of URLs so you can check out some of her links. Some of her links aren't active really anymore, but I've noticed that her YouTube is. And she seems to be doing interviews and creating videos and things. So maybe this all worked out for her okay after all. Anyway, I haven't included it all here. I don't think that the report itself is relevant. More, it's the effort that she went through to create the report. She spent about a week working on it, and it's really quite beautiful. She did an analysis of the company, an analysis of why she would be a good fit for the company and why they would want to employ her. She put in a lot of effort. So then she launched this website, and it blew up online. So there were lots of interest, just not by Airbnb. She promoted it through Twitter and other platforms, and she got lots of attention. Finally, it caught the attention of the Airbnb CEO, who tweeted, quote, "I'm reviewing it right now." So pretty impressive, but long story short, Airbnb decided that she wasn't the right fit for the role. And that was the end of that. So what does this tell us? Well, I think that it tells us that if we don't have what the company wants, we don't have what the company wants. Maybe we need to approach presenting what the company wants in a creative manner, but if we don't have it, we don't have it. And so we do have to keep that in mind. We just can't necessarily shoehorn our way into something with flair or style if we lack whatever the target company is looking for. Okay, I'm going to skip over this slide pretty quickly. It is important that we find the right format for your resume. We talked about this in class though. The 3 primary ways to present a resume are chronological, functional, and combination. So you don't see very many completely functional resumes. You do see a lot of chronological resumes when a person has a lot of experience and they want to show off that experience. Functional resumes, I think, actually have a purpose if you don't have a lot of actual job experience, then you can highlight your skills to more effect. A combination resume can be effective for many people though, highlighting both of those aspects. Number 5, build your resume to be scanned before it's read. We've talked about this a little bit. Think of the main character headings that you want to include in your resume and make sure that they are easy to follow. Keep in mind that it's very likely that your resume will be scanned by an ATS first before anything else happens. So I put this example up on your screen as an example of what not to do. This actually looks a lot like a Canva template to me. I think I've seen something very close to this before. This is the kind of really heavy design that is not going to display well on an ATS. So I would steer clear of this kind of heavy-handedness. Yes, it makes things stand out quite nicely and it's colorful and all those things, but it's just not necessary. So if you want to present your information in a way that's going to stick out, it needs to be easily scanned for keywords and qualifications. Remember that you probably only have 6 or 7 seconds to get yourself in that pile that gets you to another reading. So make sure that you do include the major elements, things like your name. Your name should be prominent, your contact information, your profile or summary, your work experience, any other activities that are relevant. So don't include things that are not relevant to the job unless you can explain them briefly in a way that makes them relevant. Awards, skills, certifications, education. Now, for someone who's just coming out of school, and this will be the case for most of you, but if you're coming out of school and you don't have much work experience and you have no way of getting that work experience, make sure that you consider where you're going to put your education. Maybe your education should be before your work experience. Just something to think about. Also consider fonts. So avoid unusual fonts. Consider fonts like Georgia or Cambria, maybe Times New Roman or Helvetica, Calibri, Verdana. Now, I would say that views on fonts differ greatly, but consider serif and sans serif fonts. Serif fonts have those little feet on the letters, so they tend to be easier to read in print. Now, why would you use a serif font? Some people find them overly traditional. Well, again, it's knowing your audience. So if you want to convey that you are traditional or your brand is traditional or stable, conservative, capable, these are the kinds of frames that you might convey if you go with a serif font. Sans serif fonts tend to be a bit easier to read digitally or on a computer screen. They have a look that's more modern, crisper. They tend to look more innovative and clean. So fonts like Garamond, Georgia, Cambria, Times New Roman, those are all serif. And Helvetica, Calibri, Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, those are all sans serif fonts. So traditional serif, modern, edgy, sans serif. If you want to show variability or add variability into your document, use bold or italics. You can also change the font size. So think about the elements on your resume. Your name, for example, should be the most prominent visual element, and it should be located at the top of the first page. This is the first thing that the recruiter's eyes should be drawn to. Headings should be used to distinguish major sections of your resume like professional experience or work experience, education, skills and activities, and so on. The bullet points of under your heading should probably be 12-point font. Headings are usually used to call out important information contained under a section. So company names that would head a section that maybe shows company names, job titles, employment dates, schools, and so on. These should have the same font size as the rest of the body content. And then the headings that introduce those, perhaps a couple of points larger. Make sure that you're consistent with your use of subheadings throughout your resume. Remember that recruiters will be likely reading from left to right. Certainly this is the case if it's English. So you want to make sure that it's easy for them to scan your resume quickly. So back to headings, just make sure that you are using similar types of categories throughout. And again, that will enable ease of reading. The other thing you want to think about is, in general, left justified is easier to scan. If you're justifying, center justifying, it takes a second longer for the reader's eye to get to the information, and that might require more horizontal delineations, so more breaks, and that may or may not be a good idea. Center justified does tend to be it tends to look a bit more busy. I would say that left justified in general looks more professional and cleaner. So be aware of that. I personally am not fond of underlining. I think it's kind of old-fashioned, so be careful about that. Again, underlining tends to look a bit on the busy side. I think you're better off bolding something if you want it to stand out. Watch your margins too, your margins and spacing. You don't want to be trying to cram in so much information that you have tight spacing or tight margins. That tends to look unprofessional as well. Try to reduce your word count. Try to highlight the skills and the sections that really are important. So if you do want to include more information or make it look more spacious, you can include something like you see on the resume at the right. And again, this resume is terrible. Don't use this template. It's way over designed. But you can break up the content that way into categories with some sort of divider if you need to. And that can work. That can work. I've seen resumes where it looks quite good, but just be careful that you don't over design it. A little bit of color goes a long way. Personally, I like to see a little bit of color in a resume. I think it, helps to make a resume pop. But I wouldn't use more than one color. And I wouldn't go with overstated colors. I wouldn't go with something like pink or even green. The colors that I've seen that I like the best are blue, and I'm not a fan of blue. I don't like blue as a color generally. I find it overused, but it is a professional color. I have seen red used successfully, although I'm not going to blanket endorse that. I think that red can be off-putting for people as well, so just watch for that.